Welcome to Ignite Intimacy, a podcast exploring intimacy, romantic relationships, sexuality, and the all of everything that relates to these hot topics. We're going in. You ready? This is your host, Miss La. Let's do this. What's happening, Ignite Intimacy community? It is Miss La, Laura Aisha. I'm here live and direct, and I've got this really incredible human being on the line with us today. This woman has inspired me by her courage and her integrity to truly align with who she is and what she's experiencing in the moment, and how to just come clean with it all, even though sometimes in life you get some backlash, especially when you're a public figure. So Alex Jamieson, what is happening, my lady?
Hi there. So good to hear your voice. So much is happening. Oh my goodness. So much is happening in the world. Holy moly.
It's intense. Right now. Yeah. So obviously here in America, we've got a lot going on, right?
Yeah.
With the election, and there's just like this heightened energy around racism, misogyny, a woman's place, a man's place. We just had a woman that ran for the office of President of the United States of America for a major party. And then, her opposite was, or is, this human being who's choosing to really act from a lot of this shadow, the underbelly of what a lot of us, I think, that listen to podcasts like these, we kind of, I think, I'll speak for myself, but as much as I do the dance with the shadow, it's like I also live in a bit of a bubble as well, because I surround myself with a lot of really powerful, amazing people in amazing communities. And so there's just so much being uncovered right now. There is.
And, it was so interesting what happened the day after the election. And I don't want to go into the politics of it at all, but in the 48 hours right around that night, I got a lot of phone calls and texts from women I know personally who have had physical, emotional, sexual trauma in the past. And, as trauma is stored in the body and has to be healed through the body, a lot of stuff was coming up. When the most powerful man in the land is now going to be an admitted sexual predator, a lot of fear came up. A lot of women were feeling really afraid. And I made some comments on my podcast because I had to record my podcast intro the day after the election. And I said, look, this is what's going on. There's a lot of women who are afraid, who don't know what's going to happen. They're feeling re-triggered for very good reasons. And this is why the body stores trauma. We feel trauma in the body, and if it's not healed, we're going to be re-triggered.
Yeah.
So here are some things you can do. You can take a self-defense class. You can go take a powerful feminine dance class. You got to get together with your sisters, with your girlfriends. Like, make yourself strong right now and acknowledge what you're feeling. And I got so much backlash from other women.
Wow.
To those comments. Not everyone said this, but I'm assuming they were all big Trump supporters. A few of them did say they had voted for Trump. And they said, you're re-victimizing these women. There is no such thing as a victim, only volunteers, which floored me. So there is still a lot of competition and mistrust between women. And a lot of women, I think, adopt and absorb this misogynist culture that we live in and believe that what we're all told in so many ways, both, obvious and not so obvious, that women should, put up with any kind of behavior, that, locker room talk is acceptable, that women are just too emotional, women are too dramatic. I got a lot of those comments. So it was it really floored me, but it helped me remember, because I too live in a bubble of, I live in New York City. I'm surrounded by women who are in the health and wellness and women's empowerment field. And I was like, oh, right, I forgot. I live in a bubble. Okay.
Wow. Well, and also, so what comes up for me, or just came up for me while you were speaking, is that many moons ago, I took pride in having more masculine energy and being one of those girls when I was younger and women that can like knows how to hang with men. And I've even been told by guys, like, you kind of think like a man, you know, sometimes. And so there was something about that in my past that made me feel powerful. And I shied away from not only the physical parts of me, my pussy, my breasts that are, you know, part of the female anatomy. I hid those parts of me when I was younger with big baggy clothes. And and I've shared this several times now on the podcast, I couldn't even utter the words vagina or masturbation or whatever. It was like I couldn't even speak those words. And there was so much shame that was just handed down to me and around me as a child growing up that I just thought, well, it would be better if I was more like a boy, more like my brothers, more edgy, more, you know, and so I picked up. And I do believe that I do have this gorgeous feminine side, and I do have this gorgeous masculine side. That's it's sort of the true Gemini nature of my beingness in this lifetime. But yeah, it's so interesting. We've made a lot of progress. And there are more and more women coming together to support each other and to say no, and men as well. You know, men saying this is not okay. This is not how all men, you know, relate to women or sex or sexuality. And there's still quite a large group of people who are in that old school mentality that, you know, women are too emotional, they're too loud, they're too big, they're, you know, can you tone it down a little? Maybe if you toned it down, you'd have a boyfriend, maybe if that kind of thing. Or that like, oh, come on, like, get over it.
Yeah, that it was shocking to me. And it was such a reminder that this is why women feel trapped. This is why women feel unsafe to make big changes, to declare their truth, to change how they eat, to change their relationships, to leave the job, to leave the guy, to start dating again. We're so afraid to be singled out and vilified, not just by men, but by other women. And we don't have each other's backs as much as we would like to think. And that is it's just one of my passions. And I know that's something that you stand for as well.
It is, you know, and I'm thinking about something that happened yesterday. I had an old friend and colleague of mine ask for the opinion of others on something that she's creating, a marketing piece for a new project that's coming out. And so just sometimes I can move a little fast. And so I was like, oh, opinion, you know, this is my girl. Like, I'll give her my honest opinion. And my honest opinion was not what she wanted to hear, you know? And so she reached out and let me know, like, I didn't like your opinion. Like, basically, I didn't like what you had to say. And I was like, but you asked for people's opinion in a public format, and I was not insulting, and I did not disrespect you, and I didn't even diss you. I just said, I think you can do better, basically. And it became this whole thing, and it was so uncomfortable. But anyhow, we're powerful as women, right? And we've got these gorgeous pussies at the base of our beings that carry all this power and all this fire and all this juice, right? And so for me, today, I'm just going to hold the question, how can I just be more gentle at times, slow down a bit, you know, and bring a little more mindfulness into the daily busyness of my own life?
You know, it's so interesting. I've been feeling this as well. And so I turned 41 this year.
Awesome.
And I have always been a type A, jump in with both feet kind of gal. I've lived all over the world. I've tried different careers. I've just been a risk taker. And in the last few years, my body has been like, whoa, girl, slow down. She's telling me in a lot of ways. Luckily, I have access to some amazing alternative doctors who are helping me really heal the damage that I did to myself by rushing and pushing so hard from a very masculine place. And, you know, I'm really grateful for the upbringing that I had. I truly am. My dad was a soccer coach and a swim coach. My mom's this eccentric artist and gardener. And so they really instilled in me, like, you can do anything. And I know that growing up playing team sports, especially, it really gives girls an incredible connection to their body and gives you a confidence that actually protects many women who play on team sports either don't get into or don't stay in abusive relationships very long. And I can definitely see that link in my own life. And I'm just putting pieces together as we do. As we grow older, we learn more about ourselves if we're willing. And I see that, okay, mom did have some narcissistic tendencies. And part of my type A-ness comes from trying to just be good enough to like really get her attention or to finally feel enough has been something that I've really struggled with. And I know so many women do. For just being a woman in this culture, you're saddled with that burden. But I'm learning, like, wait, you know, I am enough. I'm not just enough. Like I am like satisfied, you know? Satisfied is way better.
And satisfying.
Yeah.
Well, you know, and I wonder how many men. I want to get more men on the podcast because I've had conversations with the majority. I've had women guests on the podcast so far, and it's a young podcast. You know, we're a little baby podcast right now, Ignite Intimacy, and I'm curious how many men, when you really get to the core of the matter, how many men actually feel like they're enough.
Well, there's a big difference between men and women and our relationship to confidence and competent. So most men, let's say most men in corporate America will be more confident in their abilities and in taking risks beyond their competence in a certain area. Women have the inverse. We feel like we have to know something inside and out, forwards and backwards. We have to be overly competent in something before we will feel confident in it. And that's been shown across sectors. There's great studies about this, you know, and it shows up in so many ways in men, you know, and it starts in elementary school, you know, boys shouting out an answer, girls raising their hands, you know, men negotiating for a higher wage from the get-go, women not knowing how to negotiate. And there's so many factors that go into this, but in general, and again, I can't paint everybody with the same brush, but in general, it's a real thing.
It is. Well, it is. And I've heard about different studies that have been done about this. And of course, you know, there are lots of books about this, and there are huge movements to really get up underneath the love and power of women to birth more or midwife more women leaders into the world. So we could go on and on, you and I believe, for the next several hours talking about this. And what I want to do is I want you to take us back a bit into your life, because you said it, you are a risk taker. You have tried many different things and you go all in. You're all in. So you're diving in with your whole body, heart, mind, soul, spirit, and you've done some pretty freaking awesome, amazing things on your journey. So I want you to share with our audience, you know, just kind of like, I know you grew up in a more like hip, cool alternative place, Portland, Oregon, you know.
Well, it wasn't that hip and cool and alternative when I was there.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. That was like many, many years ago. But we're talking like Northwest, West Coast. There's a different energy out there.
Yeah, for sure. You know, my parents were both raised Southern, but they were both really progressive, and they were back to the landers in the 70s. So they left their, you know, upper middle class upbringing to go buy an old farm. So they were very cool. You know, they did a lot of stuff on their own. They had children to weed and mow the lawn. We did a lot of yard work growing up.
And what was their relationship like?
So, you know, mom was always a feminist, and dad is so funny. He's not going to hear this, but dad's getting crotchety as he ages, but he's a consummate educator. He felt called to education. He really felt it was his calling. And he was a teacher for a long time. And then he was a high school principal for 25 years. And they were always so respectful of what we wanted to do and explore and try. It just felt like from the youngest age, like I have their permission and support to try anything. And that's, I didn't realize till years later how unusual that is.
Wow.
When I wanted to go get a job after college and I applied for this thing, my dad's like, oh, well, you didn't study that, but okay, I'll buy you a plane ticket to go to the interview. And mom encouraged us to travel, not just travel, but for me to travel on my own. It's like traveling on your own as a young woman is the greatest thing. Do it.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, she lived in Spain and in Peru in the 60s when she was in college. And, they were exemplary people. They were citizens of the world. So I learned so much from them.
And was there a lot of love between them?
Early on, there really was. I can see how, they're both really passionate, super brilliant people, such good people down at the heart of it. They had their weird issues, but my mom, unfortunately, her family was kind of a mess. And my grandfather and my aunt, so her father and her sister, both committed suicide within a couple years of each other when I was really young.
Oh my God.
And it really just nearly destroyed her. And she really had a hard time recovering from that. So a lot of she just felt like it was her fault because they were both really close to her out of all the people in the family. And, I have such a weird relationship with suicide because I grew up with it. Like I don't know any other life except a family that was so impacted by suicide. And I haven't talked about it much. But I think that was really the beginning of the end of their marriage. She just, she went on to do some things, but it really destroyed her confidence in so many ways.
Wow. Oh, bless her heart. That's intense.
Yeah, really intense.
Well, and so how did some of that energy that you experienced as a young person drive you into the work that you chose to do around body, food, confidence, lifestyle, sex, sexuality, pleasure?
Well, okay, so mom was super open about sex. I mean, I don't remember not knowing about sex. We had the books, Where Do Babies Come From? And I remember, and it was actually beautiful, watercolored images and very accurate. So I just feel like I always knew what it was. We actually had an amazing sex ed program in 5th grade in the town where I grew up. So we got really good information. And, mom, when I was about 12 or something, mom called me into the bathroom and showed me her bloody pad and said, this is what a period looks like. And I was like, ew, gross, mom. She's like, I just want you to know what it looks like so that when it happens, you won't be freaked out. And, I always felt like I could ask her anything. And when I finally told, I didn't have sex till I was 18. And, it's not like I didn't have the opportunity, but I knew so much. I was like, ooh, man, this is a big deal. I don't want to screw this up. There's a lot of stuff that goes along with this. So when I finally had sex, I told her, and, she just listened. There was no judgment. She just listened and she was there for me. And what a blessing that was too, And I was, oh man, this is so funny. Not even my best friends in high school knew how sexually adventurous I was. I didn't have sex until I was 18, but I made out with a lot of guys, but nobody knew about it. Nobody knew about it because I knew I didn't want it to get around. Right? I didn't want to be slutty Alex. If that double standard came up, if I was a guy and I was making out with a bunch of girls, I would have been a total stud.
Exactly.
But if everybody found out that I'd kissed that guy, and I made out with that guy, and he's not even my boyfriend, and I was making out with him. So I somehow have this sixth sense where I was able to pick out the guys that I was not only attracted to, but I knew they wouldn't say anything to anybody. We're going to go have a good time behind the bleachers and you're not going to tell anybody. So nobody ever knew.
I love that. Oh my gosh, you hit the jackpot.
And then later after college, So I had like one early stint in corporate America working in advertising, which I hated. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to move to Lake Tahoe. I love snowboarding. I'm going to go snowboard and work at a resort.
Wow.
And working in a little ski town is so much fun for a young woman because it's like 8 guys to every girl. And I just had a great time.
I would too. Oh my gosh. Lake Tahoe, are you kidding?
Yeah, cute snowboarders. It was just so fun. So I really enjoyed that. And again, any quote unquote normal person would call me a bit of a slut. And I am totally okay with that. Because you know what? I've gotten to try on so many different people, so many different energies, and I'm a very faithful person. When I commit to someone, I commit to them. I've never cheated on anyone. I'm a serial monogamist. But I didn't want to deny myself. Like, why should I have to adhere to society's rules about what a good woman is? Luckily, I was raised by a feminist, and she was, I knew I didn't have to care about that.
I love that because I wasn't, and it was such a different experience for me and my twin sister growing up. And, so I too engaged with lots of different boys and lots of different men in my life. I've been religiously single in my life. So I haven't had many long-term committed partnerships. And so, I always carried that funky energy of being promiscuous or too promiscuous or bad and wrong for wanting to enjoy different people. So it's just interesting to think about. We're more or less the same age, and it's interesting to just think about, wow, like here are 2 women that as younger women were traveling in life around the same time, around the same age, doing similar things, but having 2 very different experiences.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love the power of like, call me a slut. I don't care, and now as an adult, I'm meeting men and having more open conversations with men who don't care. And
what people don't acknowledge is that for me anyway, I can't speak for every woman, but for me, I'm certain that my happy sex life now with my husband, we've been together for 5 years, I recently remarried, and our sex life is great. He's 51, I'm 41, and it's great in part because I know my body really well.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know that would have been possible unless I had, you got to drive a car around to learn how it works. You got to use your body to know what she likes. And we're certainly not encouraged to do that as women in this culture.
Yeah, absolutely. And this ties into a lot of the work that you do around paying attention. What is your body craving?
Right. Yeah, just to go back to tie this into what I learned from my mom, the other aspect growing up with her was that this organic gardening radio show that she had, I learned where food came from. I learned from her knee as a young child what food does. She taught us about herbs, etc. Whenever we were sick, we wouldn't get any sugar. Nobody else was learning that kind of stuff. So even though I was a total rebel and from ages 15 to 25 ate nothing but crap and then got really sick and had to go all the way back to my upbringing and realize, oh, mom was right. Like, I have to look at what I'm eating to get well. And it was that whole journey of like, it was totally the hero's journey, like going off on my own, getting into trouble, finding an answer, bringing it back, and then doing it my own way and creating a new way to help people with those tools that I used.
I love that. Well, and because, it's interesting, you're raised on this farm, this very conscious lifestyle. I mean, you are understanding, for me, like, I don't think that I knew where sugar came from until I was in my 20s, honestly, and so you're having like this very different upbringing than the one that I had. And you had these big sugar cravings. You were like a sugar junkie.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then it's like, okay, then the body starts to break down, right? Because the body's like, I don't like this very much. This is not, you're not taking care of me.
Right.
And then there's this awakening. And so what were the choices that came through that awakening?
So it's such a journey. I feel like we're only halfway through my story at this point. When I got really sick in my mid-20s, I was having serious migraine headaches several days a week. It was just killing me. The kind of migraine where you feel like you're going to throw up and you have to be in a dark room. And I was just taking handfuls of Advil every day. And I was eating more and more sugar and caffeine to try to get through my work day. I was putting on weight, I was exhausted, depressed. And so I went to a doctor finally, and he, within 5 minutes of being in his office, he gave me prescriptions for painkillers and Prozac.
Wow.
And because of my upbringing which I didn't mention, my grandfather who killed himself was a doctor, and he was always prescribing things to my aunt since a young age. So they were both drug addicts. They both got the drugs to kill themselves from his prescription pad. And I have a serious phobia of prescriptions. Like, I won't take something unless I really need it. And there was something in me that said, that is not the answer. That is a dangerous path to go down. Painkillers and Prozac sounds just like Aunt Jenna. So I did what I thought my mom would do, which was go find this hippie alternative doctor with a Buddha and ferns and a little waterfall in his office. And this guy asked me what I was eating. And when I told him, which was, fast food, junk food, takeout, he's like, no wonder you're sick. Okay, let's talk about what you're eating. And he gave me supplements and a list of foods to eat and to avoid. And that just, I went to the library and I started reading everything on food and nutrition. And I read dozens of books. And I found a book on veganism, which I'd never heard of. This was 1999.
Okay.
And so vegan was not really a thing yet. And, there were no Whole Foods. There was no juice cleansing happening.
No smoothie bars.
But I bought a juicer. I avoided sugar. I took out gluten. I took out soy. I took out dairy. I became vegan. And within like 2 weeks, I felt amazing. The headaches were gone. I felt incredible. I felt awake. And it just turned this into this whole health renaissance for me. And I took that experience and I was like, I need to help other people do this. Like, this is a possibility for others. So I went back to school, went to culinary school at the Natural Gourmet Institute here in New York, which really focuses on the health supportive cuisines. And it was right as I was starting that culinary school that I met my now ex-husband, Morgan. So I had a very yin-yang life. I was healthy cooking school, vegan during the day, and at night, to pay rent, I was working in a really smoky bar serving drinks. And at that super smoky bar, I saw a cute guy at the bar, and I went over and picked him up, and his name was Morgan, and he was this budding filmmaker, and I was this insanely passionate budding chef. And we put our heads together, we started dating, and about 1.5 years later, we came up with the idea for Supersize Me.
Wow. And so for those of you who don't know, Supersize Me was nominated for an Oscar, right?
Yep.
And it's just this hugely I'd say paradigm shifting documentary film about the Supersize Me fast food industry, and just like, how can we have more? How can we have more soda and more food and more fat? And, and it chronicles the journey of, the fast food industry and people who have become addicted to this Supersize Me culture and what that impact has been on our society. So if you haven't seen the documentary, where can people watch that these days?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. Somewhere online, either Hulu or Netflix.
Okay,
or something.
Just Google it. Supersize Me. It's extremely life-changing, powerful film.
They're still showing the film in middle school health classes.
Awesome.
14 years later, and we went to over 24 countries the year the movie came out. It was a global phenomenon.
Oh wow!
So because of the film, we went on Oprah. I got a chance to write my first book, The Great American Detox Diet. And, we spent the next 10 years together. I wrote 3 books on vegan cooking and vegan living, and Morgan went on to make more TV shows and movies. And then we had a beautiful little boy together 10 years ago. And then our marriage kind of fell apart. Some bad shit went down. And that started me kind of on my next evolution of the journey. You know how when things are just going amazing and then the floor falls out from under you. That happens. That happens in life. And actually, the great and crazy thing about that part of the journey was, I was left for another woman, and I had a toddler, and I was under so much stress, and I thought it was my fault because we were having sexual issues, and I thought it was me. I thought there was something wrong with me. And I internalized that so much. I can look back now and see, oh my gosh, I went through a depression. For a year. For a year, I was trying to raise my kid more than part-time by myself, trying to get my business back up and running, living in a basement apartment. I thought it was my fault. I thought there's something wrong with me, my body. It must have been something bad or wrong. And it took me about 2 years to come out of that funk. And thank God for girlfriends,
Mm-hmm.
So when I finally, so here's the other thing. So I had been this vegan expert for over a decade, and I started craving meat.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. Now, what was happening was that my hormones were tanking. I was exhausted. I was totally anemic, chronically anemic. I still have to be really careful. And I could not do anything in the vegan framework to fix what was going on. So I secretly started eating meat.
Wow.
This was challenging. This was not my brand, right? I'd written 3 books on vegan cooking at this point, but I knew I had to listen to my body.
Oh, wow.
I knew I had to listen to her. And she was asking for meat, more sustenance, more substance. Mm-hmm. And as I started eating more meat, I felt physically better, but emotionally, I was still in knots about it. So I'm really thrilled that I listened to myself, but it led to a completely next step evolution where I had to kind of come out of the vegan closet and tell all my followers, okay, I'm not vegan anymore, and here's why. And, I know some people aren't going to be super psyched about it, but not only were they not super psyched about it, I lost half my followers. I lost a handful of friends. They decided they weren't going to be friends with me anymore because I was eating meat. I got death threat emails.
Oh, gosh.
It was nuts. It was really nuts. But again, it points to this very real fear that women have, that if we are honest about what's really going on with us, that other women will reject us. Not just reject us, mean girl the shit out of us. Big time. And it's even worse in this social world that we live in.
Wow. I mean, that's intense.
It was intense. It was really intense. And, some people were supportive, and sadly, some people were not. So, it takes real ovaries to speak your truth in this world.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But that whole experience, that whole coming out experience, led to my latest book, which our mutual friend Jonathan Fields was actually really integral in that. And it became a whole exploration of women's bodies and cravings, and connecting to what our bodies want, and having the bravery, the courage to explore what our bodies are asking for, whether that's sex, whether that's food, whether it's experience. There's a lot that we ignore when it comes to our body. But I have seen over and over again with my own clients in my own life, when you listen to your body and follow her signals, that's where your truth, that's where your soul really resides.
Well, and women largely are taught to like other people's needs first, like your partner, your husband, the kids, the this, the that, your career, your boss, and then it's like, you're like you are the last person on the list. You're the lowest priority. And not everyone. I mean, this is not across the board, but I would say largely women take care of everyone else first and then themselves. So huge implications as far as our sexuality goes.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Because, I mean, I don't know, did anyone ever teach you how to ask for what you want in the bedroom? Nobody ever taught me about that. I had to fumble around and figure it out. And I'm still, as a grown-ass woman, figuring it out.
Right. Yeah, it's really true. It's really true. We need to learn how to ask, but doing that, to ask for what you want means you have to know what you want. Mm-hmm. And in order to know what you want, you have to spend the time, guessing what you want and then trying and say, oh, nope, I guess that's not what I want. Okay. Wait, what did that sensation feel like again? Okay, it felt like this. Maybe it meant I want that. Well, okay, no, that didn't work out. Okay, let me go back to that sensation again. What do I want now? Like, what do I really want? What can I do to get that feeling, to birth that into reality? I'll try this. Oh, okay, that's it. Okay, now try that, right? It's a series of experiments, but it comes from first listening to your body, connecting with her. And because we live in a culture where women's sexuality is so taboo, our most basic desires of pleasure from such a young age were turned off. They're blanketed, they're doused with ice buckets. Mm-hmm. So that connection is very faint, and it takes some work, and it takes a safe space, and often takes a coach or a guide to help you rediscover that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's been, I know for me, there was a lot of shaming. So my connection with my body was shamed into submission and into silence. And my knowing was just constantly judged. It was constantly, I was basically told by different people that like my knowing wasn't my knowing, and you're not, and I actually knew things at a very young age but I went through this period of time where I picked up from other people that, oh no, you don't know that. And so then I started second guessing myself all the time. And now I know for sure that I know what I know, because I don't know why I know things, but I do know them. And I've had enough experiences now that my knowing is pretty freaking spot on.
Yeah, but it takes time to get there. It really, really does. Mm-hmm. So we've got to have compassion for ourselves as we explore this. And I know that we need to wrap up here, but I just want to, as a way to offer a self-compassion mantra for yourself as you begin to go into your own desires, remember that if you've ever seen a baby or helped a baby learn how to walk, when the baby falls, you don't go, dumb baby, you're the worst. You suck at walking. You should never even try again. Right? A baby has to get up and fall hundreds of times before they learn to walk. Mm-hmm. And we need the same compassion for ourselves, because it's even harder to learn things as you age. Mm-hmm. So be as nice to yourself as you would a toddler just learning to walk.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm wondering if we can just I'd love to touch on the value of sexual pleasure for digestion and body confidence, because we're talking about paying attention to our cravings, paying attention to that body guidance. What is the body like? What doesn't it like? What turns us on? What ignites us? What are we like a definite no to? Yeah. So how does all of this information, how does it affect our sexual pleasure?
So it comes down to one very simple concept. You can either stress or you can digest, but you can't do both at the same time. So your digestive system is your second brain. It's your emotional, your feeling brain. And your gut brain and your head brain are connected via the vagus nerve, and it's a two-way freeway. They communicate to each other. In fact, it's mostly from the gut to the brain. You know, the gut has a lot of warning systems in place to warn the brain something's wrong. We feel a lot of stress and tension in our bellies, which is also right crammed up next to our reproductive organs and our pleasure organs. And if you're having digestive issues, which so many women are, you have to look at how you're handling your stress. Do you have the tools besides food to help yourself calm down and release tension, trauma, and stress and fear? Most women don't. They only have food as a way to calm themselves down. And most of us are living in a constant state of stress and panic. So we're constantly eating to try to soothe our body, calm it down, overstuff it so it just numbs out. And that does relate to sexual pleasure in several ways, but just briefly, we of course are disconnected from the feeling of righteousness around sexual pleasure. You know, I believe it's a woman's right to pursue and enjoy her sexual self, to pursue the pleasures of her body. But we are talked out of that. We're taught to ignore it, in fact, fight against it. So the only pleasure that we're allowed is food. Your body needs pleasure. Your body needs to feel good every single day, all the time. It needs to feel good. And if you don't have any other ways to give it pleasure besides food, just like if you don't have any other ways to soothe yourself or de-stress besides food, then food becomes our safe sex. So it takes that might be like a huge insight aha moment for some of your listeners. And it takes some time and it takes support. So I just recommend keep coming back to this show, keep finding people whose books and ideas you resonate with. Find a tribe, build a community to help you explore pleasure in your own life.
Absolutely. And as we know, Mama Gina, School of Womanly Arts, huge movement around pussy power and really putting pleasure first. And really in service to midwifing more women leaders and more leadership from women in the world. So that's just, the first thing that came to heart and mind. The other thing that I'm thinking is like, how sucky is it when you are getting hot and heavy with a man and like you're constipated?
Yeah, absolutely. Constipation, any digestive issues like, stomach pain, gas, bloating, diarrhea. Like our guts are so messed up for so many women, and it makes it really hard to enjoy being physically close with someone else.
And okay, so I realized that I didn't share your bio with our audience. So let me just do that. I just want to make sure everyone knows the goddess powerhouse that we have on the line with us today, Alex Jamieson. So as a best-selling author of Women, Food, and Desire, co-creator and co-star of the Oscar-nominated documentary Supersize Me, and highly sought-after wellness expert for thousands, Alexandra Jamieson has made it her mission to empower women to create epic lives by honoring their cravings and kicking body shame to the curb. Alex is the creator of the Cravecast. It's a #1 rated podcast on iTunes, holler, where listeners from around the world are educated and captivated by thought-provoking interviews on wellness, cravings, sexuality, and more. She has been on Oprah, The Today Show, Dr. Oz, Martha Stewart Living, The New York Times, CNN, Fox News, Elle, Marie Claire, the list goes on and on. Alex is really doing incredible, powerful work. And she's a life learner. So she's a wellness expert, and she has grown from all of her experience. Alex, it has been such a great pleasure to have you on the line today. I'm just so excited to just share you with the Ignite Intimacy community for any of our listeners that aren't familiar with you and your work and your magic in the world. I don't even like to call it work. It's your magic. You're consciously sharing your magic. So let us know, where can we find you online?
So the best place for people to go is to discover more about what their cravings mean and go to cravingsquiz.com. Take a little quiz, get a great report, awesome information about what your cravings are really telling you.
Great. Okay. And then are there any other links that you want to share with us right now?
Yeah, you can go into iTunes, and by the time this show goes up, my own podcast will have a brand new sparkly name. We're changing it to Her Rules Radio. So go into iTunes and find Her Rules Radio and listen.
Awesome. Great. Well, Alex, thank you so much for just jamming with us today and sending you and yours so much love for this holiday season, the new year to come, and give thanks for just the power that you be in the world.
Thank you so much. Such a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Well, Ignite Intimacy, you heard it live and direct. It won't be live when it hits your ears, but it's live right now, and I'm telling you, it feels good. So Ignite Intimacy, if you have any insights, comments, questions, holler at us. hello@igniteintimacy.com, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one. Until then, stay blessed. Give thanks for tuning in to another conversation on the Ignite Intimacy podcast hotline. We love that you choose to spend your time with us. Check us out online at igniteintimacy.com and subscribe to us on iTunes. Also, tell your friends all about it. This beautiful music was arranged by Jason Pfaff and Mike Corey, and this podcast is produced by yours truly, Miss La. Give thanks again, and we'll see you on the next one. In the meantime, let your light shine bright and ignite your intimacy.